AMISOM undertakes a new role in Somalia. Internet freedom declines around the world for the fourth consecutive year. We'll have details. And President Barack Obama makes history in 3D. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin in East Africa, where the UN-sanctioned military mission to Somalia, known as AMISOM, is taking on a new role after freeing much of the country from Al-Shabaab control. Abdulaziz Bilo from Mogadishu reports that more freedom of movement is needed to help alleviate the impact of drought and food insecurity.
AMISOM troops will now deliver aid to drought-stricken areas of Somalia, following an agreement reached between the United Nations, Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs and the African Union Mission to Somalia. The new role for the AU troops follows the mission's military successes in the vast south-central part of the country, once controlled by Al-Shabaab militants. And it comes none too soon. More than 1 million Somalis are believed to be at risk of starvation, with the UN estimating 3 million more are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. Maman Sidiku is the head of mission for the African Union forces in Somalia.
I'm so proud of what AMISOM has done. Our men, our boys, as we call them, have done on the ground. But we also want, through the guidelines, to show that they're not just people carrying arms. They're also people, soldiers, but actors, opening the way for the populations of South-Central Somalia to be accessing their God-given rights to food, to health, to education.
The new guidelines aim to foster constructive civil-military relations between AMISOM and humanitarian groups operating in the same areas in Somalia. AMISOM troops will now work on opening up key supply routes and towns cut off for years by Al-Shabaab. Felipe Lazzarini, the deputy UN envoy to Somalia and the country's resident humanitarian coordinator, says preventing another famine depends on being able to reach those in need.
If we can improve the movement of basic commodities and movement of population, it will favorably contribute to the overall food security situation. It is true that today we are in a situation which is comparable to 2010. We have a number of indicators telling us if we are not addressing the need today, the situation will get worse tomorrow.
The last famine in 2011 left more than 250,000 Somalis dead. But the warning signs were there in 2010 when a severe drought was aggravated by rival groups fighting for power and the international community was slow to respond. Before these new guidelines, AU forces played an informal but crucial role in the making humanitarian assistance available. Here in Beledweyne town in central Somalia, AMISOM soldiers from Djibouti are assisting the recent flood victims. Following recent victories by Somalia's army and AMISOM, life is slowly returning to normal in coastal towns like Adalle, recently freed from Al-Shabaab. And with the return of stability, the government and its humanitarian partners hope to use such towns as Adalle as staging areas to deliver aid to the interior and drought-stricken areas of south-central Somalia. Abdulaziz Bilo for VOA News, Mogadishu.
Well, General David Rodriguez, Commander U.S. Africa Command, briefed the media Wednesday on U.S. military operations on the continent. He spoke on a number of topics, that is including America's military presence in the fight against Ebola, Libya, and the Islamic State, and the U.S. military's role in helping Nigeria combat Boko Haram. In response to a question from VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb, General Rodriguez talked about the use of intelligence and surveillance.
Because of the isolated area and because of the challenges that they see with Boko Haram, they've not been able to develop that situation further.
So
okay.
Is there a way to make this more precise and get the data to them? And
it's a mixture of everything, whether it be the human intelligence, the image intelligence, and everything, and in coordination with the Nigerian military, we've not been able to get the precise fix that they desire to take the action.
Well, General Rodriguez says the U.S. military is also working with Chad, Cameroon, and Niger to help contain Boko Haram within the borders of Nigeria. Now, for more insight on Rodriguez's press conference, we're joined via Skype from the Pentagon by VOA's Carla Babb. Hello, Carla.
Hi, Vincent.
Now, expound a little bit on why, if we know, the Nigerian government doesn't seem to be using all the help that is being provided by the United States.
Well, because the intelligence and the training, everything that was being provided by the United States, the Nigerian government is wanting more. And it's very difficult for the United States military to go into a country, it's not its country, it's Nigeria, and find Boko Haram because they are very spread out. We're not looking just for one big group of people, we're looking for several people. The terrain is horrible, it's mountainous, it's very thickly vegetated, and so it's very difficult to try to pinpoint where the Boko Haram terrorists are.
Now, we know that in this briefing, General Rodriguez also talked about ISIL or ISIS making inroads into North Africa. Can you give us some details?
Right. He said that they have seen a couple hundred, it looks like, at initial estimates, going into Liberia. They said that some of these could be local militants, local militias that are just trying to make a name for themselves. They're going to use the Islamic State to try to get support. But he said that they have noticed that there have been Islamic State training sites in eastern Libya, which is pretty much not under anyone's control right now.
Any plans, perhaps, to challenge this group over there?
He said for right now, he said there are not going to be any boots on the ground. He said their focus is still, when it comes to the Islamic State, going to be in Iraq and Syria because they're going to be monitoring this closely and seeing what comes out of it. Right now, we're just talking about dozens, maybe a couple hundred of fighters, and they want to see, he said that this is a very nascent, this does not look like it may grow into anything, but they're just going to keep monitoring and see before anybody gets boots on the ground.
Now, Carla, he also talked about the Ebola crisis in West Africa. What did he say about the progress in the construction of the Ebola treatment sites by the U.S. military? And he also mentioned something about the number of those centers.
He did. When it comes to Ebola, things are going well. He said that the 2,900 U.S. troops that we have in the West African region right now, that is going to be the peak. He said that he does not foresee any more people coming in. He also said that thanks to everything going on with USAID, they've been able to adjust their requirements, and instead of needing 17 Ebola treatment units, they now only need 10. And they've also adjusted some of the sizes of these units. Instead of having 100-bed units, there's only going to be 3 100-bed units, and the other 7 are going to be 50-bed units. He said that they could wrap up the logistics as soon as the end of this year or January, and then they could be wrapped up completely in the area by as soon as this summer.
Well, keep us posted, Carla.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your reporting. Carla, viewers, Carla Babb reporting live via Skype from the Pentagon. Now, this year, in communities across America, the relationship between African Americans and local law enforcement officials has been stormy due to the killings of several black men. Now, for the second time in recent weeks, major protests have erupted following a grand jury's decision not to charge a white police officer in the death of an unarmed African American man. VOA's Caroline Weaver reports.
Demonstrators gathered at New York City landmarks Wednesday to protest a grand jury's decision not to indict a white police officer in the death of an African-American man in July. The U.S. Justice Department says it will investigate whether Eric Garner's civil rights were violated when Officer Daniel Pantaleo put him in a chokehold while arresting him on suspicion of a minor crime. New York's medical examiner said Garner's death shortly after the arrest was due to chest compression and ruled it a homicide. On the sidewalk near where Garner died, one woman responded to the grand jury decision with disbelief.
You gotta be kidding me. They didn't indict him? Why? Where's the justice at?
New York area lawmakers also responded with anger. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries.
What more does America need to see to understand that we've got a problem in this country as it relates to the relationship between the police and communities of color, which far too often results in the death of unarmed, innocent African Americans such as Eric Garner.
In Washington, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder announced a Justice Department investigation.
Mr. Garner's death is one of several recent incidents across our great country that have tested the sense of trust that must exist between law enforcement and the communities they are charged to serve and to protect.
Protesters at Times Square later marched to Rockefeller Center and Columbus Circle. At Grand Central Station, about 25 people staged a die-in, lying down on the floor. Passers-by had mixed reactions.
I don't understand how is that a protest. They're bothering other people from getting home.
There's clear-cut evidence that he was in the wrong and that he should be going to jail.
It is very upsetting that the officer wasn't indicted, but you know what? As a black female, I didn't expect her to be indicted, and that's sad to say.
Further protests are planned. Carolyn Weaver, VOA News, New York.
Well, internet freedom has declined around the world for the fourth consecutive year, as a growing number of countries impose various forms of online censorship and monitoring practices. Rights group Freedom House on Thursday issued an annual report that says more people are being arrested for their internet activities than ever before. VOA's Latza Hoke has more.
The report, Freedom on the Net 2014, says that more than one-half of the 65 nations studied have toughened their policies regarding filtering or censoring online content since May of 2013. Some governments also have expanded the types of electronic surveillance they conduct and ways to punish citizens whose online activities they deem unacceptable. Rights group Freedom House blames such actions for a global decline in internet freedom.
The most dramatic declines were in Russia, Turkey, and Ukraine. And then, similar to our findings in past years, the countries that really performed the worst out of the survey, again, are Iran, Syria, and China.
The survey says Russia's score has declined over each of the past 5 years. And since Vladimir Putin returned to the presidency in 2012, the government has enacted multiple laws to block online content.
We saw Russia really start to target some of those online independent media outlets in a way that they had not done previously. That happened in March. They used a new law that was actually passed in December. This new law allows the prosecutor general to issue orders to block online content related to extremism or calls for unsanctioned public protests. And so this law was then used quite quickly to block independent media outlets within Russia that were either reporting on the events in Ukraine or that had been critical of the Kremlin in the past.
Ukraine's standing also declined, primarily because of violence targeting social media users and online journalists during anti-government protests in Kyiv, when then-President Viktor Yanukovych was in power. According to the report, this year also has seen a worldwide increase in arrests linked to internet activities. Internet users were tried not only for what they posted online, but in some cases also for content found on their electronic devices.
Particularly in the Middle East and North Africa, of the 11 countries that we study, 10 of those countries arrested internet users over the past year.
Iran, Syria, and China were the worst online freedom abusers overall. Some nations have slightly relaxed their tough controls over the internet, among them Myanmar, Tunisia, Cuba, and most of all India. Internet users in the United States and most of Europe continue to enjoy the widest freedom, although the United States lost some points due to revelations of unwarranted surveillance by the National Security Agency. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out all headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, well, grim news for Sierra Leone in the fight against Ebola. Stay with us.
Wherever you are, Voice of America is on air, reaching more than 130 million weekly, worldwide, in more than 40 languages. online, social media, and breaking news from around the world. On the go, dozens of new features on popular platforms with new apps and trending topics. Voice of America, on air, online, on the go.
Welcome back. Now, new data shows the Ebola outbreak intensifying in Sierra Leone, even as it stabilizes or declines in other West African countries. Well, the World Health Organization says Sierra Leone reported 537 new confirmed cases in the week ending November 30th, a jump of more than 150 over the week before. In its latest update Wednesday, the WHO says the outbreak has largely stabilized in Guinea and Liberia. Now, the overall Ebola death toll is slightly more than 6,000. Well, because of the size and seriousness of the Ebola outbreak, VOA and the BBC are collaborating in order to give audiences in Africa and around the world access to the best information and content available. Well, this report focuses on the impact Ebola is having on Guinea. Today, the BBC takes us to the village where Ebola first appeared.
It's a treacherous journey to Ground Zero, where this outbreak first began. This is the trip many of the sick have to make to get help. We're heading to Milandu village, where Ebola first emerged, probably carried by fruit bats. Etienne's 2-year-old son Emile was West Africa's first victim of Ebola. He tells me how his daughter Philomene became ill soon after Emile died. Then his heavily pregnant wife started showing the same symptoms. She died shortly after giving birth. Her baby was stillborn.
When I think about them, I feel very sad. The pain is too much. I just can't bear it. But then I have to say to myself, they've gone. I just have to accept it and move on.
Ebola has robbed this community of 26 mothers, fathers and children. But people in this village are working hard to keep the virus out. There hasn't been a case here since March. Experts now have a much clearer picture of how the outbreak started. What's less certain is how and when it will end.
There's no sign of a slowdown here. This treatment centre, 80 kilometres from the village, has only been open for a week. Today, it's had to close admissions.
I would say I'm a bit pessimist, unfortunately. Looking at the first week of data we have, it's increasing a lot. We cannot reach the population. People are hiding in the villages. Families are hiding the sick people, but also the dead bodies.
This is often the consequence of fear and denial in communities. Families hit by Ebola are put under an informal quarantine. 2 people recently died here. Many of their loved ones are now at risk, including Mamadi, the brother of one of the victims.
I'm praying God that sickness can go forever. You know, we praying God for that. You know, just present here, we're very happy for that.
Back where it all started, the community at Meliandu has learned the hard way how to keep the virus out. For Etienne, the horror started well before the world understood what this outbreak was capable of. But he never knew the graves he dug for his wife and children would be the first of many thousands. Tulip Mazumdar, BBC News, Meliandu village, Gekadu.
Well, that was Tulip Mazumdar reporting for BBC. Well, unpredictable weather is wreaking havoc on Rwandan farmers. On average, they're losing about 40% of their harvest. If nothing is done about this, it's estimated that it could cost the agricultural sector up to $300 million a year by 2030. This report from International Fund for Agricultural Development explains how farmers are adapting to climate change.
The rain here in eastern Rwanda is almost 3 weeks overdue, but to the relief of farmers, it is finally being forecast. So today, Vice President Odette Mukankiko has rallied together members of her maize cooperative to start sowing. She is hoping the rainy season will finally kick in and their crop will have enough water to grow.
Because of climate change, our yields are lower, and even when it rains, the maize doesn't grow well.
In these rural areas, planting cycles have always been determined by the seasons. But now, Odette says, rain no longer falls when it should, and traditional farming practices are failing.
We used to start drying the maize in the field, but now it's often raining. When we have good yields and no place to dry them, they will spoil after a month.
Farmers can now lose up to 40% of their harvest due to erratic weather. And if the climate change issues are not addressed quickly, it could cost the country's agriculture sector up to $300 million a year by 2030. So the International Fund for Agricultural Development, or IFAD, and the Rwandan government have teamed up to help minimize these losses. It is part of IFAD's Climate Change Adaptation Program for smallholder farmers. Coordinating the project is John Viega Sasira.
Farmers also, they have the knowledge, they know, and they have some answers to different problems. What I need is that capacity to react on time before it is too late.
To help build that capacity, farmers' cooperatives are now being equipped with modern facilities, like this one, where crops can be dried and stored safely, whatever the weather. These centres are also business hubs, linked directly to markets and processing plants, where crops are cleaned, processed and stored professionally. Business training is provided so farmers can become market players, capable of delivering large quantities of high-quality produce to both public and private companies. But it is not only crops. Milk production too is being affected by climate change, as Alfred Nisingimana says.
When it rains and we have fodder, we get about 13 liters of milk a day, but we get much less when we have long dry spells.
Rising temperatures are also challenging dairy production. If not kept cool, milk can go off in 2 hours. So now, every morning, farmers take their milk to a hub, this time a milk collecting centre, where it is stored hygienically and refrigerated. Run by cooperatives, members receive steady incomes from sales and have a loan system set up to get through scarce periods. Alfred and Odette are now better prepared for unexpected weather events, and production is improving.
Through maize growing and having access to markets, I started to get more income, and I could afford to get the iron sheets to build this house I'm living in.
This 5-year programme aims to provide facilities and know-how to 155,000 more people like Odette, enabling farmers to succeed, despite a rapidly changing environment.
Well, that report was from the International Fund for Agricultural Development, a UN agency. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Barack Obama makes history again in 3D. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines.
The African Union says there will be a deployment of 250 Nigerian medics to Ebola-stricken nations. In Sierra Leone, the World Bank announces a $160 million two-year economic recovery plan to help battle the Ebola outbreak. In Nigeria, the group Bring Back Our Girls takes protests to the Chadian embassy, encouraging cooperation between governments. In Tunisia, Mohamed Nasser is appointed the Speaker of the newly elected parliament. Finally, in Equatorial Guinea, the Africa Cup of Nations draw takes place in the capital, Malabo.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Another first for U.S. President Barack Obama. Well, Mr. Obama is the first head of state to be photographed in a special 3D live mask portrait. And it certainly is realistic. Now, the president was flashed with 50 custom-built lights that flickered precisely to create 10 different lighting conditions in just 1 second. Now, photos were taken by 8 high-resolution cameras designed for sports and 6 wider-angle cameras. Technicians also scanned Obama with 2 handheld structured light 3D scanners. The portraits went on display this week at the Smithsonian. They will be on view there through December. Next up, Hello Angels. Rhinestones, feathers, glitter gallows. The Victoria's Secret models crossed the Atlantic for the lingerie label first catwalk show in London and put on quite a show. The 47 models showed off the brand's most extravagant creations, including jewel-encrusted bras worth $2 million each and angel wings made of gold. Now, the full catwalk extravaganza airs on December the 9th. Well, and finally,
can you feel it? Found you hiding here, so won't you take my hand, darling, before the beat kicks in again.
Well, singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran is the year's most streamed artist on Spotify, while Eminem tops the list in the United States. Spotify announced its top streaming artist albums and songs of 2014. While the week's not surprising, Pharrell's Happy was the most streamed song of the year globally. Sheeran racked up more than 860 million listeners on Spotify. His latest album is the most streamed album worldwide with 430 million streams, and that is what is trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here, have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords.
You might have heard this word used in stories about countries and their money. It often is used to talk about financial matters.
In a bid to stabilize Ukraine's economy, IMF Mission Chief Nikolai Georgiev says the world's lending body has agreed to provide up to $18 billion in emergency aid, not counting the additional loan guarantees.
Stabilize means to make something stop from changing. Many times, it means trying to keep something from becoming worse or to fix it.
The word stabilize is also used in medicine. When patients are very sick, doctors will work to stabilize them, to prevent them from getting worse.
So, the next time you hear the word stabilize, you will know what this newsword means.